Okay, so again, we are going to look at the session 2 of Unit 2. It talks about the normative framework for collective bargaining. The normative framework for collective bargaining. So at the end of this session, we should be able to become familiar with the core binding legal instruments related to the ILO declarations, and again be introduced to the key elements of the normative framework on collective bargaining, especially the ILO's declaration. So, with the declaration of ILO, we are saying that conventions and recommendations in the declaration basically refers to the instruments used by the International Labour Conference to set international labour standard. So the convention and the recommendation of the declaration seeks to provide instruments that help the International Labour Conference to set certain international labour standards that actually can be implemented by all levels of employers across the globe. And we are saying that the conference also adopts other types of tests, including declarations, of which we are going to talk about. Declarations are resolutions of the International Labour Conference used to make a formal and authoritative statement and reaffirm the importance which the constituent attached to certain principles and values. So when we are talking about declaration in terms of the ILO, we are basically looking at a resolution. In other words, a form of an agreement that has been reached to be able to actually settle certain discrepancies. So declarations are the resolutions which have been set by the International Labour during their conference in order to serve as a formal and authoritative statement that can be used to reaffirm the importance which the constituents attach to certain principles and values. Yeah. And again, although declarations are not subject to ratification, in other words, they are not subject to enactment. The ratification here means that enactment, another word for ratification, has to do with what? Enactment. Or some will say sanction, permission, authorization, or confirmation. So declarations are not subject to confirmation, but they are intended to have a wide application in certain symbolic and political undertakings by the member states. So that is what the declaration seeks to actually do. Now, going forward, a number of declarations by the ILO make significant reference to collective bargaining. So in the attempt of bringing out certain resolution, of which he said declarations is a resolution system, they attempt to make certain references, or they make certain references to the existence and the relevance of collective bargaining. So the primary conference in declarations are set out below. So they have a primary conference and the declarations are set out. So these are some of the declarations which actually happened during or in the course of their primary conference. So the 1944 declarations of the Philadelphia, which is annexed to and forms an integral part of the ILO Constitution, commit the ILO to promote the effective recognition of the right of collective bargaining. So it means that collective bargaining did not just occur or did not just started to happen. There are certain formal works, there are certain conferences that were held for people to be able to consent to the relevant, or for the right of workers to be able to embark on collective bargaining. The right to organize and collective bargaining convention. So here it has two folds: the right to organize and collective bargaining Collective Bargaining Convention. That's in 1944, the session number 898. And it's an international labor organization convention. And we are saying that it's one of the 8 ILO fundamental. Continue from where we have already landed. The Tripartite Declaration of Principles Concerning the Multinational Enterprises and Social Policy of 1977 provides guidelines on freedom of association and the right to organize and collective bargaining as elements of sound industrial relations. So these are basically things that we can actually read to get. But I want us to look at the declarations on gender equality. Declaration on Gender Equality. So the Declaration on Gender Equality of Opportunity and Treatment for Women Workers was adopted by the International Labour Conference in 1975 on the occasion of International Women's Year or International Women's Year. So it means that the Declaration of Gender Equality was actually given birth to the occasion where International Women's Year was held. That was the time where the resolution or the issue about gender equality started to be preached. So the declaration seeks to recognize equality of opportunity and treatment of all workers and calls for the elimination of all forms of discrimination on grounds of sex. So, and it's something that we are always saying that it is very hard to be eliminated from the system of employment, because different people have different ideology in terms of who to employ and who not to employ. And even another reason why some of these things cannot easily be eliminated is as a result of private entities. I have established my own business and I have decided that I don't want to employ any woman in my establishment. Who are you to come question me that I should do that? Because you are not the person who gave me money to establish the business. And again, I can decide the number of women that I can employ in my organization. But there are some instances we see the government institutions are actually practicing it. And even with the government institutions, some of these things are actually happening. Issue about gender inequality. So there. So the question is, what are we practicing and what are we saying? Now, I want us to look at the 1998 Declaration on the Fundamental Principle and the Rights at Work. So it distinguishes four principles and rights at work as fundamental. So the Constitution or this particular declaration actually distinguishes or designates that there are certain four basic principles that every worker should be able to have, or there are certain basic rights that every worker should not, in other words, are not jeopardized to every worker. So one of them, freedom of association, of which I've talked about, and the effective recognition of the right to collective bargaining, elimination of all forms of forced or compulsory labor. They are self-explanatory, right? Effective abolition of child labor. Elimination of discrimination in respect of employment and occupation. So these are basically some of the declarations that were stipulated as far as principles and the right at work is concerned. Now, governing body declaration. So the Tripartite Declaration of Principle concerning multinational enterprises and social policy. The principle laid down in this universal instrument offer guidelines to the multinational enterprise declaration. So we are saying that government and the workers, employers, organizations are supposed to ensure that employment, training, conditions of work and life, and industrial relations actually persist in every organization. And again, it also provides room for reinforcement or reinforced certain international labor convention and recommendation, which the social partners are urged to bear in mind and apply to greatest extent. So this is the International Labour Conference Declaration. In 2019, so the ILO Centenary Declaration was adopted at the 108th International Labour Conference. So in a nutshell, we have looked at this declaration as being resolutions of the International Labour Conference that are used to make formal authorization or used to make formal and authoritative statement that helps to reaffirm the importance which the constituents attach to certain principles and values. So we should be able to answer some of these assessment tests, test the understanding of issues that have been alluded to in the course of this particular session. Thank you very much.